your background. So, Geordie, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. Kia ora, my name is Geordie. I'm originally from a small village called Ashurst, just outside of Palmerston North, but now live in Wellington, just in the suburb of Island Bay. I moved here to study software engineering alongside Amber, believe it or not, at Victoria University. And now I'm working at Microsoft in the Azure for Operators team. So we're working on sort of data plane solutions for telecommunications operators to run things like private clouds for construction sites, manufacturing, and a whole bunch of other awesome stuff. My day-to-day job basically looks like making sure we can set up cloud environments to run end-to-end tests to make sure that when someone does need to make a phone call, the other person at the end of the line can pick up and they can have a conversation. So that's pretty much me.
Thank you, Geordie. Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Sherine tuka ingoa. Hello, everyone. My name is Sherine. I am a specialist at Deloitte. I'm originally from Egypt, and I have been at Deloitte for a year and a half now. Just an insight about my day-to-day thing. So I basically am on the technical side of Salesforce. So usually I work on projects like, for instance, with the bowel cancer screening for the Ministry of Health, or with the NZDF, which is the New Zealand Defence Force, for recruitment. So yeah, my work is kind of scattered along with different projects. And basically I work on Apex, which is the Salesforce programming language, which is very similar to Java. And I'm a big fan of Java, so that's why I fell in love with Apex. I love like integration between different systems with Salesforce and connecting to external web services, and these kind of things. I'm really, really a big fan of it. So thank you so much for having me, and that's me.
No, it's awesome. So cool to have you both here. I think it would be cool to get into a bit of how you both ended up in tech. I mean, Sherine all the way from Egypt, and Geordie even further, Ashurst. So if you could maybe explain a bit about, I don't know if there was like a point where both of you realized that, oh yeah, this is where I want to go, or, was it a bit like, was it just straight, yep, uni, straight into the job, off we go, or was it a bit more of a journey? How did you guys find that?
Would you like to start, Geordie?
Sure, I can start.
In order?
I guess I have a memorable moment of when I realized that I wanted to be in tech. The entire time growing up, I had told my mum that I wanted to be a forensic pathologist because I loved watching like NCIS and Bones and like all those shows. And I remember like breaking down into tears, crying, telling her that actually I didn't want to do that. I wanted to go into tech. And I thought she'd be so embarrassed of me not wanting to go into a medical profession. But it turned out that's what I loved doing. I loved ripping servers apart. Sometimes my dad would bring home old computers from work that didn't work, but I'd just like take them apart. Kind of like a kid just destroys everything. That's kind of what I did with computers. And so like I started studying at university, and then for a moment there, I thought I wasn't interested in being a software engineer. I dropped out of sort of doing software engineering in uni and went and worked at Summer of Tech as an event coordinator, so kind of in the tech space, but not doing tech stuff. And then eventually I realized that wasn't what I enjoyed doing on a day-to-day basis. I actually enjoyed writing code and doing those sorts of things. So I came back to work at Microsoft. And I guess that's my journey into tech. Not very linear, some emotion in there, but got to the other side and I'm super happy with my position now. So yeah, very cool journey.
Can I ask, Geordie, just before Sherine jumps in with her story, what was the deciding factor for you to get back into software?
I think mainly for me, it was that ultimately it's what I enjoyed doing. Like it was the intense problem solving, being given a problem and going through a whole bunch of technical documentation, finding creative solutions that either minimize budget or decrease the time to first deployment. Anything really where someone was like, can you work on this? Because I don't have the time and I don't know how to do it. And I'm like, Yes, that sounds like the solution for me. Give me all the near impossible tasks.
Very cool. What's it, Sherine?
Yeah, so mine is kind of similar. Yeah, a bit of a curvy path. So I finished a bachelor degree in commerce accounting, and then when I finished, I was offered a scholarship to get a diploma in IT. I didn't know anything about it. I tried it, and it was amazing. It was a mix of back-end, front-end database things, and I guess that was the moment that I realized, well, I really, really love the object-oriented languages, but I wasn't clear, is it object-oriented language, Java, or Oracle? So when I finished, I got to work as an Oracle developer, stayed there for a year, but then I felt it's not really my comfort zone because, yeah, I feel that programming is more, there is a space for more creativity. So yeah, so when I came here to New Zealand around 5.5 years ago, I studied another diploma in advanced software development, which really focused on object-oriented programming languages, C# and Java, basically. And then I got involved in Summer of Tech boot camps, joined hackathons as much as I can, startup weekends. I tried to get really involved in the community here. And then someone reached out from Deloitte through Summer of Tech about a cadetship program, which Deloitte is offering. And it was during the lockdown times, and the country is closed. So they would like to train people to be consultants and specialists. So yeah, that was really great opportunity for me. It was around 6 months, 3 months only studying consulting skills and introducing myself to Salesforce, which was the first time ever. So I got, at the end of the 3 months, I got the administrator certificate. And then the next 3 months, it was shadowing someone else during projects. And actually working on projects. So I got introduced to the BAL screening for the first time. I got introduced to the New Zealand Defence Force. There was a melanoma New Zealand as well. So yeah, now I'm a 1.5 years here, and I started working on that really, really technical Apex things. It's continuously, yeah, impressing me. Yeah, so Salesforce, yeah, really, really is a huge ocean. And from the technical side, it is still a huge ocean. So yeah, it's really exciting always to learn more about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's me.
Very cool. Very cool. So you both ended up kind of doing this study in IT or software. And then you ended up in these roles where you are now. Sherine doing Salesforce, Geordie actually on the team, if I understand correctly, helping to build some of the Azure services. Is that right? Yeah. Crazy. From my memory, there isn't really like the courses in uni that directly apply to those jobs. I think the closest that we got to that, there was like a DevOps course. Geordie, did you do that one?
I dropped out of that one.
Oh yeah, that's right. So could you, I mean, Sherine, I know you were talking about the program that you went in at Deloitte, which sounds like it was really beneficial. But for both of you, kind of what was the jump there from the standard uni courses and then into these roles which don't really fit into a university curriculum?
It's free stuff. Like there are so many people online who just go out and give something a go, like whether it's creating a function in Azure Functions or whether it's, spinning up instances in AWS. There are so many just like tutorials out there of someone went and gave something a go, they wrote up how to do it, and you can follow along with them and get that same satisfaction. And that was kind of something that I didn't get from university courses. Like it was kind of, do this very minute thing and you don't really see the impact of what you're doing. But yeah, it's like you can build something in Azure, for example. Someone that I work with has built a function that emails his flatmates every week on a cycle when it's their turn to put out the trash. Like those tiny little practical things that you can do quite easily. And it's just super accessible. You don't have to spin up a whole development environment and have a server in your house that runs it. You can just click a few buttons in a portal, write a bit of YAML, and you're good to go. And I think, yeah, that's kind of why I was like, oh, university courses, a little bit boring. Cloud, very exciting.
Very cool. So you were just like finding these like tutorials or these other things outside of university, or like where did you find the time to be doing these?
Well, sometimes I did it instead of university courses, and that definitely affected my grades a little bit towards the end. But I think for me, at least, it was that it was really fun, and so like it was always something that I did as a hobby. And I guess I was also fortunate enough that I had a job outside of uni that was quite flexible, and so I could find the time to do extra courses and things like that. But I think one of the things that I've also learned is that even Microsoft itself in their learning portal has so many guided journeys that you can go through. You can get a whole bunch of badges, very similar to the Salesforce courses. And there really is so much that you can learn by doing, as opposed to just sort of sitting in a room and listening for 15 hours a week.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah.
How about you, Sherine?
Yeah, it might be a bit different because, yeah, no one teaches Salesforce in the universities. And yeah, so for me, because I knew that I wanted to work on Java specifically, or object-oriented language, it was a bit challenging to find something related to it at that time. But I was open to everything, even the full stack. So I started to learn about everything just to broaden what they called the T-shaped knowledge. So the first time I heard about Salesforce was through your posts, Amber. But yeah, I didn't get that chance to dig deep to understand what is really Salesforce. So when I was granted or offered this role with the cadetship to learn Salesforce and be consultant, it was really, yay. The moment came to learn what is really Salesforce. So yeah, I guess it was kind of, it came to me rather than I went to it. But once they mentioned Apex, I was keen to know more, which is Apex, which is like a Java-like language. So that, I guess that was the main thing that pulled me through that. One more thing is that what I liked about Salesforce and the role I'm having is that it's not 100% technical things. There is client interaction. There is like communication with humans rather than just being with the laptop. I do love technical things and deployment, but still I do like people as well. So yeah, I guess for me it was the way, Deloitte was the way to learn Salesforce, and of course during the Salesforce trade had. And to be honest, I'm like, because I love visual things, I love courses. So one of my main resources was the Udemy. It has really very good courses for different Salesforce certificates. So yeah, I guess it's a mix of both for me.
Yeah, fantastic. So cool. All right, so we've kind of arrived at like you guys getting into these jobs and starting them. People on this call, they're doing a bunch of different courses. So we've got people who are doing the AWS course, the Azure course, the Salesforce course. And often there's a little bit of confusion around, what do the other platforms do, or how do these operate, or what do they actually look like? So I was wondering if each of you could maybe talk about kind of something cool that you've seen done, whether it's in Azure or like you were talking about, Geordie, the example of, your workmate just sending out messages to their flat when it was their time to do chores. Is there anything like that that you could maybe describe to give people who aren't aware of Azure or Salesforce a bit of bring it to life a bit, so that it's not just a bunch of confusing names or confusing things, but what does this actually do? What's an example of it in use?
That's a great question. I think one of the things, so I originally started in AWS. A lot of my cloud training, I was like, oh, AWS is the way to go. And so a lot of my knowledge comes from there, but I actually found that I've now worked in GCP, AWS, and Azure, and a little bit of DigitalOcean. So like all of those concepts translated into all of the different clouds. And I think each of the different clouds do have sort of a slightly different methodology. But I think one of the things that Salesforce and Azure have in common is while their focus is providing cloud services, it's also really strongly focused on providing a platform. And so in terms of the Azure system, Microsoft has always been about empowering people and organizations. And so there are a whole bunch of things other than just virtual machines and functions that the Azure team build, but there's also Nginx built directly into Azure. There's also a whole bunch of services. Why can't I think of any off the top of my head? I should know. But we're really about providing that platform in a marketplace where people can come in and provide their own services, and really about expanding what is possible with the cloud by making it easier for other people to build what they dream.
Have you built anything yourself, like personal projects in Azure?
Oh, personal projects. I do run a couple of websites for like personal stuff through Azure. They use a whole bunch of different things like Azure Front Door, which is a content delivery network. So there's actually a WordPress server running in the background, which is a content management system. And then the Azure Front Door takes things like images, JavaScript files, CSS files, and distributes them globally on an edge network so that regardless of where you are in the world, you're getting those files from the closest destination possible, even though the server is actually running in Australia. And then that server itself has a pretty awesome function that Azure has, which is instant failover. And so if for any reason there was an outage in Australia East, it would instantly migrate to Europe and continue to function with less than 3 seconds of downtime for the end user. And that's only one VM. I don't have actual 2 VMs running at once, which I think is pretty cool.
That's awesome. Super cool.
Yeah.
Sherine?
Yeah, for me, I guess, as a simplistic form, Salesforce is just an environment for a business to manage their data in a good user interface and very highly customizable user interface. That's very simplistic form of it. But in a broad way, Salesforce could work as a point of connection between different integration. Like it integrates with sometimes, for instance, when I was working on the bowel screening, it did have integration with different things. It did integrate with AWS technology. It did integrate with the MuleSoft technology, sending data forward for different parts, for different organizations. Like, for example, for instance, if someone is creating a profile for a patient who might be eligible for bowel screening, bowel cancer screening, but we need first to check if they already have a cancer, like a profile in the New Zealand Cancer Register. So that kind of thing, for example, is needs Salesforce to connect to that other institution or organization to make sure that they don't already have a profile there in progress. It also connects with another thing, like, for instance, LabPlus. So when tests are done, it does connect to LabPlus, sending the information over there and bringing back some updates. So I think that Salesforce is, yes, a good user interface to manage your data. However, it's collecting data as well from different organizations and pulling them over to you for you to alter and change and may send updates over there again back. So yeah, I guess it's really a powerful tool.
Yeah, absolutely. Just listening to you guys talk about all these different tools and the integrations, it reminds me of some questions that students were asking me at the beginning of the course. So when they were thinking about doing it, and they were saying, should we be learning a lot of different tools, or so that we can kind of handle these integrations or handle what's going on, or is it better for us at this stage to just focus on one, get really good at that? So I guess an example is like if they're working through some certifications, is it best to do the entry-level certifications in AWS, Salesforce, Azure, Google Cloud, or do you think maybe sticking with one and then going deep? Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
I think for me, it kind of depends where you see yourself in the cloud environment, because there are so many at least coming from like an Azure perspective, you could be specialized in bare bones infrastructure, looking at, virtual networking, firewalls, route tables, those intricacies of how packets move through the data plane. But there's also the other aspect of it where you might be more interested in the platform as a service, where you're looking at things like authentication and user information databases. And so I think for me, regardless of where you are in that space, the sort of what Sherine was talking about earlier with the T shape works really well. In terms of progressing through it, I think the fundamentals are really good because they kind of give you an introduction into how you might use that system. But in terms of the actual knowledge about how the cloud works, going deep into any one of those platforms, that information can be shared across the other clouds. It's the same concept, but with a different name. And so, yeah, I think when I reflect on how I learned, I went really deep into AWS, but also knew like a tiny little bit of GCP. And now I can basically take that knowledge to any other cloud provider.
Yeah, I second that as well, Geordie. I guess, yeah, it's good to learn about different things. I believe from my learning approach, it was I learned through easy ways about different things, like attending boot camps, going online for courses. However, when I realized what I want to study, then I started to take certification through that path. So, yeah, it depends again. If you're really keen to expand your knowledge in really different fields, then go ahead, take certs in those different fields. But from my perspective, it was easier just to learn until I find out which one I really like and enjoy. And at that moment, I start take certifications through that path. So yeah, I guess I felt that spending too much time on the horizontal T-shape would not really give me a solid thing to master. So yeah, that's why I've learned horizontally, but for the certifications and like very committed courses, I went through the whatever I really love and I would like to learn more about.
Very cool. Yeah, I think that's really, really useful actually. It's good to talk about because this is a new area for a lot of people. It's not, these are the mandatory courses that you have to take. It's much more open and there's more certifications than one could, hope to do easily. So
yeah, sometimes it's overwhelming.
Yeah. How do you guys deal with that? I mean, does it feel like there's just an endless amount that you constantly have to be learning, or is that like part of the joy, or how does that go?
I guess that is part of the joy for me in a little bit. Luckily at Microsoft, we get given sort of a suite of training journeys that we can go on. So I guess because I work at Microsoft, I get all the training and certifications and those things for free. But even the training pathways is like, do this one thing, then this one thing, then choose from one of these 20 things. And so like there still is like so much choice. But I think like Sherine said, it is just kind of dancing around and doing little bits here and there to figure out what it is that you actually want to do. Because when you're doing something that you're passionate about, it's so much easier to reach that end goal than kind of starting something and going, oh, I've started this and I'm not really enjoying it. And then you have to push through it. And then that makes picking up the next one a little bit more difficult. So sticking to what you find fun is a great way to keep yourself engaged, I think.
Yeah, I'd like also to add that even though if you spend some time learning something and then you figured, well, that's not really my sweet spot, it's not a lost time. It's great to be added to your CV or to talk about it or brag about it, that you've learned this and this and you've tried this and this. So yeah, at the beginning I used to feel, oh, I lost some time doing that, but then I realized that it's really a valuable learning experience. So yeah, just try to cherish everything you learn, and it would be great to talk about it or add it to your CV. And yeah, absolutely, it's a constant journey of learning. I believe the more I learn about the technology of Salesforce, and the more I explore, the more I find that there is really, really a lot to learn. So I guess it's a part of the journey. I guess for the IT, always it's a learning, continuous learning. So yeah, absolutely, it's a fun to learn always.
Very cool. And what's the balance like in work? I mean, are you learning outside of work hours, or do you have set times during work where you learn, or do you just find that the learning comes with the work that you're doing?
It's a tricky question.
Yeah.
This is like to me as well. Okay.
Yeah, I think so for my work, I think my overheads are 30%. So 70% of that is considered me sort of doing productive stuff. And then 30% of that is learning, meetings, getting coffee, like all of those things. So yeah, Microsoft does take an approach of the growth mindset. And so every year we're sort of required to sort of show how we've upskilled or learned from something during that year. And I think that's really important in the tech field, especially where it's constantly growing. And if you're not growing along with it, it's very easy to sort of get stuck in one place and not get to experience all of the new shiny things. So yeah, most of my learning I do at work because my employer thankfully gives me that time to do it and encourages me and pays me to learn. And then sort of outside of work now, I'm just starting to tinker with some like open source software development, which has been an interesting experience to say the least, but definitely worth a shot.
Very cool.
Yeah, I guess we have a similar approach as well to Microsoft. So yeah, we do our employer do support like 60-70%, and the rest is like admin work and study. However, that it's not easy to apply from our side because it's a very fast-paced environment, and there's always kind of deadlines and project going on. Yeah, it's really, really very fast-paced. Sometimes it's a bit challenging to study during the working hours. But some other times, when work is a bit low, there is more time to study. So I guess, yeah, from my side, I won't say that it could be consistent if it's going to be during the work hours. It needs to be up and down. If I need it to be consistent, then I would need to take out of my own time. So yeah, so it's just a balance. There's always temptation to be dragged to one of the two sides. Either, oh, there's a lot of work, I can't study, or there is I need to study a lot, so I take a lot of time of my own personal time. So yeah, it's like constant struggle to balance.
Yeah, and I guess like all of the work that I do in a sense is learning as well. Like I think every single thing I get handed, I might have some baseline level of knowledge in, but there's always something that I have to go and Google. Stack Overflow is a great friend. We even have our own internal Stack Overflow. That's how many questions we ask. So yeah, I mean, like just constantly learning. That's what I love about it.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. All right. There's been a question in the chat which I think was quite useful here. From Chris. Chris says there are so many rabbit holes that we can go into. How do you handle i.e. learning about data analytics in Azure and then not understanding half of the terminology and processes? It's actually a good question. Yeah, I get that a lot. Maybe Geordie and Azure being on there.
Yeah, data analytics is a whole nother field. And so I can totally relate to not knowing any of the terminology despite working on the Azure platform. And I think even thinking about even the people who sell that product probably don't know all of the terminology. It's such a massive field. And I think if you can be comfortable with not knowing the terminology and just feeling like eventually you'll get it, I think that's totally fine because everyone else is playing that same game where they're just pretending until eventually they get it. I think one of the other things, at least for me, is when I struggle with terminology, if I can find some tutorial about how to implement something that terminology describes, then even if my understanding is not totally correct, I at least have a baseline, and then each time I interact with it again, I refine my understanding of what that concept is a little bit more. So I don't think you could ever know exactly everything about, definitely not the cloud, maybe not even data science, but every day you can get closer to knowing more about it.
That's awesome. Sherine, did you have anything you wanted to add there, or?
Yeah, I'm just seconding Geordie's words, and trying as much as possible to not fall into the rabbit holes. From my side, for instance, Salesforce has a lot of those things. Sometimes I start looking for something and I end up looking at something totally different. So especially when you don't know everything, you don't know that exactly that's not really relevant to what you're learning currently. So yeah, I guess it would, for a while it could be continuous challenge, but yeah, as Geordie mentioned, the more you learn, the more you get confident, and the more you understand things in a better way and filter things in a better way as well.
Very cool. All right, there's another question in the chat here from AJ, and he's saying, can Geordie tell us about what his day-to-day looks like at Microsoft? What stack does he use normally? So it's probably a good time to get into those day-to-day tools and kind of routines. So maybe if each of you want to just explain what a day in the life looks like, if there is such thing. What's kind of a day, for example, tomorrow. What would your day be like tomorrow?
Well, tomorrow I have my anniversary day, so
Very cool.
I'm going to work. But on Friday, I guess usually I come in the morning, very blessed to have breakfast at work, and then just we have a stand-up because I'm kind of working in a slightly different team. So I don't work in a product team, but I work in an infrastructure support team. So I'm supporting the developers who make the product. So catching up with my manager and the manager of the build team to basically make sure that there aren't any roadblocks for our developers, and that we're continuing to build better platforms for them to develop code on. So on Friday, I'll be working on some end-to-end test infrastructure. So we sometimes need to spin up 100 VMs and run tests through those VMs and then destroy them all so that it's not costing a whole bunch of resource. And so we're using Bicep templates, which are, if you've been using CloudFormation templates at AWS or ARM templates in Azure, it is a domain-specific language. Sorry, terminology. It's a made-up language that basically creates templates that mean you can deploy things. So I've been working on that. I'll continue working on that. So hopefully our developers can actually run massive tests without having to manually go to the Azure portal and click on buttons and say, okay, I want 100 of these VMs and I want them to be this size and I want them to connect in this way. They just say, I want a pool of 100 VMs to run a test through and then run their test.
Very
and then,
cool.
I think that's pretty much it. A lot of asking questions, probably. A lot of Googling. Yeah.
For me, I guess it's, for instance, if I got to work, I would be working on a couple of tickets, developing them. Some of them might be just point and click in Salesforce, but basically most of them would be technical ones. So I would be, for instance, using the VS Code for writing code and then pushing it to Bitbucket. So after it's tested in my sandbox and it's working well, because Salesforce work with different sandboxes. So we don't put things directly to the production. We have multiple sandboxes. Each developer has their own sandbox, and then we push it to the testing environment. If it is tested by the testers and all good, then it's deployed to the production. So yeah, usually I would work on VS Code, finish my work, deploy to sandbox, my own sandbox, test it, it's all good. Then I would push it to Bitbucket and go through the deployment pipeline thing. And when it is tested, and then when it's pushed to the testing environment, I do go test it for myself just to make sure that testers would find everything all good. And then if it's all good, I will deploy it to the production. So yeah, most of my day would be like that. Of course, a lot of meetings, more than I expected for a developer, to be honest. Yeah, usually we have a stand-up every day on the project. If it's only one project, of course, if it's multiple projects, then I would have a couple of stand-ups. Yeah, I guess that would be, yeah, a general overview of what I would be working on. Yeah, basically using VS Code for coding and Bitbucket for deployment. But of course, it depends from one project to another. But yeah, usually Deloitte use those two tools.
Yeah, very cool. In terms of tools, actually, just jumping on that thread and giving it a bit of a pull. You both mentioned getting work or getting tasks. At uni, it's like, here's an assignment, off you go. What are the sort of tools that you're using on the daily? We've mentioned VS Code and Bitbucket. Are there any other technical or organizational tools that you guys use?
Yeah. Believe it or not, Microsoft is very strong on security. So we have a sort of custom build of Azure DevOps, which has a whole bunch of security and component governance built into it. And so one of the projects the build team works on is every single time there's a package vulnerability, we have an SLA that we have to meet, where we have to get that package updated in our source code within a certain time frame. For my team, everything that we deploy to Azure also has custom security packages running on it. So there's special things like you can't just log into a VM. You have to use a secure workstation to jump into a VM if it's got customer data. A whole bunch of those special tools that are very exciting. But mainly it is working in Azure DevOps. VS Code, which I think is honestly the best IDE ever created. Definitely not biased. And yeah, and Microsoft Edge, not because it's my favorite, but because it's what we use.
Very diplomatic, yeah.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, for me it would be VS Code and Bitbucket. There's also Source Tree, which is like Bitbucket in different project, but basically, yeah, we use those two tools at Deloitte. Of course, so this is as a technical Salesforce developer. If you're talking about the BAs or the functional Salesforce developers, they would be using more tools for flowcharts and for like, of course, we do use Jira for managing our work and managing our tickets. We do use Confluence Pages to have, for a while, to be the source of truth until the things are starting to be developed. Like, yeah, writing all the preparations and planning for the project would be on Confluence Pages. So yeah, we've got a mix of tools here.
Very cool. Very cool. If you were to recommend people to pick up one that you think would be most useful to learn before they got into industry, before they started a job, what one do you think it would be?
Oh, like what tool? I think especially the way it's going with reproducibility and like infrastructure as code is pretty big, and being able to use Git is a massive win for anyone, I think. There are some great resources out there. I can't remember the name off the top of my head. That's not very useful of me. But if you can somehow get an understanding of Git where you can visualize what's happening, if that's the way that works in your brain, or at least understand what's happening, it makes it so much easier to collaborate with others, make sure that your code isn't being lost, all of those things. I think the time and effort that I put into learning Git has been an absolute lifesaver. The amount of times I've been like, oh, I didn't mean to delete all of those files. And then because I remember, for those of you less familiar with Git, behind Git is what's called a ref log. And so it's a Git of your Git commands. And so you can undo stuff. Would highly recommend in learning ref log if you're prone to making mistakes like I am. But yeah, I think Git's that one tool for me.
You're saying make sure you know where the undo button is, basically.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I would second that. The Git is a very important tool, and Git commands are really, really helpful. And they are helpful with different like platforms. Um, and also, I would, if of course, it depends. If someone is on the AWS side of things, then I won't be able to help much in that field. But if it's on the programming side of things and coding and deployment, then I would really recommend the VS Code. It's really very easy to use, and it's used in different languages. So it's going to be really, really handy whatever you would be working, or whichever language you would be using. Yeah.
Very cool. There was a question in the chat here from Alec who said, would you prefer to work from home or the office?
For me, I am quite talkative, and I love to just talk at people as a way of sort of thinking through problems. And so for that reason, I'm far more productive in the office, and I also love getting distracted by things that are off topic in the office. So that's why I choose to go in. Sometimes, like today, when I've neglected to do my washing, I choose to work from home though.
Yeah, I would be a bit different than you, Geordie. So yeah, I love both, but sometimes I get distracted with things at office. So I feel sometimes I'm more productive at home. But yeah, it depends, to be honest. Sometimes I'm really productive at the office, but sometimes I'm really productive at home, and that happens when I do have the mix of both. But if I go to the office every day through the week, productivity gets decreased. And if I stayed the whole week at home, again, productivity falls down. So the ideal situation for me would be both, like going to the office 2 or 3 days a week, and this way it keeps my productivity at both places high, reasonably high.
Yeah, I think the balance is what most people are ending up doing. Yeah. I can see that Geordie's put in the link here. It's such a good name. That's a really good one. We'll make sure that we put it in the Slack as well. So if anyone saw that one, it's ohshitgit.com, which looks like it would be a good one for learning your mistakes. Peru asks, random question, by any chance someone knows the easiest way to map 2 lists of keywords to conduct similarity visualization using a free online tool? I might throw this one to Geordie quickly, but it sounds very technical. So this may be one that we just throw it to Google at a later date. Geordie,
Thank you, Amber. If someone knows, please drop me a line in the chat. I have it. Thank you.
All right. Geordie, did you have any comments on that?
No, we're good. All yours, Geordie.
I'm not even going to pretend that I know how to answer that. No idea.
All right, Peru, you might be on your own there. If someone else happens to know, then please get in touch. That'd be good. But I have mad respect for throwing that out there.
If you manage to get that, I'll be very impressed. Totally stumped.
People are saying that the half and half, working from home, working from the office, is a good balance. Terence says Bitbuck's documentation on Git was very helpful. Chris was saying it's funny that you're working from home. I think he said it's got washing to do, priorities. Very cool. Awesome. So if you have any more questions, guys, please put them in. We're actually running out of time quite quickly. So if anyone does have any more questions about, what we've talked about, or either of their jobs, they're actually quite different jobs. So Geordie's working in-house on a product. Sherine's working as a consultant on a range of different projects. So again, if you had any questions about that, AJ is saying, can Geordie tell us a bit about the Microsoft graduate program?
Sure. Yep. So the Microsoft graduate program is called Aspire. It runs for 2 years, and it is run globally. So my cohort, I think, is I think 1,900 grads across the world. So we had sort of like in our first week, you get a meeting where you get introduced to everyone else basically that started that week, because there's graduates starting every week at Microsoft. And then in your first year, you have what's called Start Strong, and it used to be like pre-COVID an in-person event, so all 2,000 grads would be flown to Las Vegas and they'd have a week-long conference. Now it's an online event, but still pretty cool. They get a whole bunch of guest speakers and some. I can't remember what his name was, but he was like a TikTok musician that came and performed for us and stuff. So it's pretty exciting. And then yeah, we have a whole bunch of programs where you get to meet all of the other grads. So I now know grads from Singapore and India, Sydney, a whole bunch of places in APAC, and have even met some of the grads in the UK when I went over there early on. So the grad program is pretty cool. I get to do Stay Strong soon, which is kind of at the end of your 2 years. And then even after the grad program, there's then an early in career program, which runs for the first 5 years of your career. So there's lots of support there in the first 5 years.
Yeah. Sherine, do you know much about the grad program at Deloitte or anything like that?
Yeah, so I guess the graduate program just focuses on people who just recently graduated. So we do have both graduate program and the cadetship. So it was newly introduced in the cadetship a year and a half ago, but it's still on, it's still used. So we recently had an intake for cadetship for the AI and for SAP and Oracle as well. So yeah, I guess we still do have both. But the cadetship would be for someone, for instance, who is career changer, or they worked overseas, they have experience, but it's challenging to find work here. So yeah, I guess the expectations are a little bit higher in the cadetship than the graduate program. Yeah, but yeah, they're both really are great, and I really encourage everyone to keep an eye on those things because it's really, really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Terence is saying, how did you two get your foot in the door, so to speak? I think that's meaning like the first jobs, I guess.
Yeah, I think when I first interviewed, I think I was the only person that interviewed that had used Docker and the cloud. And so like that was a differentiating point for me. I had done something that was different to other people, basically. I had something that I could talk about where I had a genuine curiosity for something, went and learnt about that thing, and could then talk about it while still being like just openly enthusiastic about the fact that I actually genuinely enjoyed it. And that's kind of why, at least from the feedback that I got post-interview, was why they gravitated towards me, because they were like, well, we want someone who's going to learn heaps because there's all the stuff that we don't have time to learn, and we need someone to learn it, pick it up quickly and run with it. And so they were just looking for that genuine curiosity, and that was kind of getting the foot in the door. That I didn't really have any relationships with anyone at the company beforehand or anything like that. It was just, yeah, having that point of difference.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it was a bit challenging for me, especially as a migrant. Yeah, having the not having the first language English, it needed me to get very involved in the community. So I guess that was really, really helpful for leveraging my communication skills, which was, I guess I understand from the interviews that it was something very important, as well as showing, as Geordie was mentioning, that you're keen to learn and you're always curious to learn new things, and you don't fear failure, which is really, really important, because usually we do make mistakes, but what is important for them is how do you handle those situations. And yeah, I guess it was really crucial for me getting involved into the community. I volunteered, I joined hackathons, boot camps, any startup weekend I find I just join. Yeah, don't feel don't withhold yourself from any kind of risks. Of course, healthy risks. Yeah, just give it a go. Speak. Don't fear to make mistakes or say wrong things or not be perfect. Yeah, I guess all of these skills are really, really crucial and important for someone to put their step, to have their first step. And I guess those from the interviews, I understand, yeah, that was really crucial for me.
Mm. Really good. Yeah, it sounds like kind of doing your own sort of projects, getting involved in the community, and then just having that hunger to learn is a really good combination. All right, we're going to wrap up. I think there was one more question here from Puru, and then we'll call it. Puru is saying, I was unsuccessful after the second interview in graduate program at Deloitte. Next time when I apply for any role, should I start from step one, such as immersive online assessment? I don't know, Sherine, if this is something you'd know, or if it'd be best to reach out to, an HR person or.
Yeah, so usually because the cadetship was a bit different than the graduate program, I did actually apply for the graduate program before and I failed. I wasn't successful either. So yeah, it's the immersive online assessment is a bit tough and it's tricky, but bear in mind that it's not really a pass and fail assessment. It is actually a way for them to figure out what exactly is your strengths and weaknesses. So there's no ideal answer, but it reflects how are you categorized, or where is your strength? Is it analytical skills or communication skills? So yeah, I totally understand it's a bit challenging, but usually, yeah, you would start from the first step. And yeah, if you're keen to look for jobs, I'm happy to help with you, like with supporting you or referring you internally if you're still keen to join Deloitte.
I am definitely keen. How do I get in touch with you?
So maybe we connect through LinkedIn. With my name is Sherine Balaha.
Right, I will send you a request on LinkedIn. Thank you for that. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Happy to help.
Awesome. Puru is on the hustle today. All right. I think we're gonna leave it there. Did either of you want to say kind of some final words of advice or kind of final thoughts before we wrap up?
I was going to say, I think the world of technology is changing rapidly. We're very soon going to be at a point where every single person who leaves primary school, intermediate school, high school, knows how to program, knows what technology is. And I think slowly, some of the things we've heard already about universities not necessarily keeping up with the pace of coding. It means I think that all of you that are on this call are in the right place. You're ahead of schedule, you're ahead of everyone else, getting certified and understanding what the next step is for tech. So I think you're all in the right place. You're all going to do a fantastic job, and I look forward to seeing you out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Learning skills is a great important thing, and yeah, keep learning with the way that suits you. Don't feel that you need to learn in a specific way because that's the way used for that technology. I would recommend, for instance, because it was challenging for me learning with trailheads sometimes. So I like people describing things. So do not put yourself in a mold that you need to fit in. Just explore the way that you love it to be and enjoy learning constantly. And all the best to you all.
Amazing. Thank you both so much. If everyone could please just put their thanks in the chat, or feel free to pop in a message about what you've learned or something like that. But thank you both so much. That was so useful and so much fun. And I just really enjoy catching up with both of you myself. So it definitely feels like it's been a lunchtime just hanging out with friends. Thank you so much. Hopefully, we'll see you back in another 6 months or so. But yeah, look forward to following what you guys are up to. And again, just thank you for your time.
Thank you, Amber and Geordie, and thank you, everyone.
All right. Thanks, everyone. We'll be seeing you next Wednesday for our next guest speaker. Bye, Brad.
Thank you, Amber.
That's all good. Thanks for sharing. Have a good day.
Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.